This is Diamond D with where I'm giving you some love advice, some happiness advice, some everyday good advice to make your day a little more loving.
Hi, this is Diamond D with Love and Happiness, where I'm giving you some love advice, some happiness advice, some everyday good advice to make your day a little more loving. Our guest today is Dr. Alessandria Wall. Dr. A is a speaker, psychologist, and coach who has dedicated her life to making women find and become their absolute best. She is the founder and CEO of Life in Focus, a practice based in San Diego, California, and is licensed to practice with the State of California Psychology Board. She's the author of the ebook Back to Me, which is available on her Life in Focus website. Please welcome Dr. A to the
I
show.
am
Thank
very
you so
excited
much
to
for
be here.
joining us today. I am pleased to have you. So tell me, Dr. A little bit about your personal story and your journey to becoming a psychiatrist, a wife, a mother, and how you're able to handle it all.
So I started off, I think like many kids, trying to figure out what I wanted to be growing up. And very early on, based on movies and books I'd read, I thought a psychologist would be a fantastic job. And then, like most psychologists, and anybody here who has a friend or who personally is in, let's say, the caring of others business will know, there's a lot of us trying to fix our own stuff and our own past and help other people not go through some of the things we've seen or experienced. So there's definitely that piece to it. I actually grew up in Europe and before that in the Middle East. So I moved, but my dad's American. So I moved to the States in the mid 90s, not late 90s. I graduated in the late 90s. Went to college and kind of did that thing, just school, got my degree. I've been with my husband for 22 years. It's a long time.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's work, as anybody who's in a long-term relationship with anybody knows. Every single day, it's work, and hopefully it pays off, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, and I have two boys, and they're a handful. I know you have two kids too, two boys too, and they're also a lot of work. But you know, in that theme of love and relationships, that's whether we're talking about romantic relationships or the relationships I have with my patients, or I'm also a coach, or the relationship with my kids. Every single one of them takes a lot of grooming, a lot of investment, and usually pays off.
Absolutely. How do you advise your clients, either moms or non-moms who are trying to balance and have a career, have a social life, maybe even have a family? What are some key points that you use with your clients to help them to sort of stay balanced and be on the right path?
All the advice I'm going to give, I'm going to say is advice I use for myself. So none of it's just theoretical. A lot of it's applied. It's applied with me, and it's applied with the hundreds. I've worked with hundreds of people at this point in my career. One of the things to remember is that idea that we can have it all is true, but the way we think about having it all is a little bit of a fantasy. So the way I look at balance is you have to figure out at any one point in your life or moment what's going to take priority. So we can't have it all and have everything be number one at the same time. There have been periods in my life where taking care of my family has trumped taking care of my career. I think that's true for a lot of for a lot of moms, the first 5 or so years that our kids are growing up. I always tell new moms, your career is going to go on hold for at least 5 years. Or if dads are the primary caretakers, their careers are going to go on hold for 5 years, right? There are other times where my career has taken the front place. I mean, this is a really good example, right? Right now, a lot of us are still sheltering in place. Our work lives have changed, and I made my whole house quiet to be able to do this. This took priority. Being helping and slowing down, taking time for yourself where you disconnect, to ask yourself what's the priority, and then be willing to drop the ball. There's a great author, Tiffany Dufu, who wrote this book, Drop the Ball, right? And she talks about figuring out when you just have to let things go and not try to please everybody and be everything for everyone. That's what I try to embrace. It's what I try to teach.
And I think that's hard sometimes to drop ball, especially if you are a mom and you're balancing, because I think that moms sometimes feel guilty when they have to go to work, guilty when something happens when they're not around, whether it is a behavioral problem or some other situation that takes place with their kid. How do you handle that, or how do you advise your clients when they just have that mom guilt?
So emotions are knee-jerk reactions to our beliefs and our thoughts. One way to think about the feelings that we all walk around with every single day is they're just physical manifestations of the stuff that's going on in our head. And guilt, specifically the emotion of guilt, is what we feel when we start to believe I did something wrong. One of the first things I do when I start to feel guilty is ask myself, did I actually do something wrong, right? What is it that I'm telling myself is so wrong? And did I actually harm somebody or do something that goes against my moral values and principles? And oftentimes I find we feel guilt, but when we check our guilt, we realize we haven't. The other thing I try to do as much as possible, and this is just my style, and everybody's got to figure out what their style is like and what works for them, is I'm really verbal about not winning Mom of the Year award. And I kind of normalize that for people, right? And normalize the fact that, you know what, I yell at my kids sometimes and they drive me nuts, and there are days I don't want them touching me, right? And what I found is when you talk to other moms openly about it, initially they're shocked. And then they start admitting that they feel the same way.
Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah, I had a friend. She's still my friend, but she tells me that sometimes she eats cake away from her kids just so that she doesn't have to share. And at first, the first time she did it, she felt a little bit a tinge of guilt. But after the second and third time, she's like, that's her thing. She'll like eat the cupcakes and the cakes away from the kids just because she doesn't want to share with them, and she feels like it's her moment, her downtime, and that's just a way for her to unwind. And I know that you're big on making sure that your clients have the appropriate level of self-care. And you do something called a spa bear. What is a spa bear?
Yeah. Actually, before we get to spa bear, two things. One, her cupcakes are my apple pie. I am like a fiend with apple pie. We'll take pieces and I don't want to share it with my kids ever. I do, but I eat more at night while they're asleep than they get. How about that? So Spa Bear it's an acronym. It's 7 behaviors that are part of having, speaking of balance, a balanced normal day. So the first 3 are the spa piece, are the things that we do to have a sense of fulfillment in our day. And the last 4 are the things we do to keep our angry bears at bay. Right. So in order, every letter stands for something. If you want to have a sense of balance in your day, you got to do something social every single day. Social can mean going out with friends or doing something that's truly engaged, but social sometimes means just walking to your neighborhood coffee shop and having a conversation with the person who's serving you coffee. Make eye contact with another human being. We as human beings, we struggle to make eye contact with strangers. Saying hi to people when you walk out on the street. I still do that. Sometimes people look at me like I'm crazy. But most of the time, you see people and their face light up for being noticed. That's socializing, and we need that. We need close social interactions as humans, and we need those kind of surface interactions with our UPS, FedEx delivery people, with the people we meet every day on the street. So that's the S. P is do something pleasurable. There's this thing moms do where they stay up really, really late at night because it's the only time they have for themselves, because there's nothing else in their day that's been built out to feel like it's pleasurable and to feel like they're treating themselves. So that's the only moment that they can really do it. And so trying to plan out through a day to do something that feels good for you. That can be eating your cupcake. For me, we'll talk about it, comes the art of nothing. It's sitting outside in my backyard. When we're done with this, that's what I'm going to go do. I'm just going to go sit in my backyard and stare into space, or reading a book, or I love old school jazz. So those things, something that feels pleasurable every single day. A is do something that feels like an accomplishment. That cannot just be the stuff you do in the workplace, right? So depending on what it is, you want to be able to check something off your list where you feel good about getting it done and taken care of. So that's your spot thing. Social, pleasure, accomplishment. You do
Okay.
that, you get a sense of fulfillment in your day. And then the bear thing, the first one is be done with the guilt. Be kind with yourself. A really easy way, if you're listening to this or watching, to do that is notice the shoulds in your head. God, I should have done this. I should have done that. I should have, should have, should have, should have, should have. Right? Should is so easy in hindsight. It's so easy to look at something that's already happened and to calmly, in the space you are now, determine what you could have done. So you just want to think about it as shitting all over yourself. I didn't invent that. It's used a lot in my field, right? You don't want to shit all over yourself. You want to think about, is this a rule? Is this a law? Did I break a rule or a law? If the answer is no, then I transform the should into could. Would like to, wish. I should have gone to the gym. I should work out. Well, I could work out, right? If I want to stay strong, if I want to get my heart rate up today, like maybe I will work out, right? I should have said that. I wish I hadn't said that, right? So we want to shift that language because removing the should removes the guilt. Be kind with yourself. That's another way to use that be kind with yourself at least once a day. The E is exercise. That might be going to the gym. Sometimes for me, it's just cranking up the music in my home and dancing. I love to dance. It can be, if you've got little ones, just running after them in a playground. It can just be parking a little bit further. But humans need to move. The only time we don't move is when we're sick or dying.
Oh.
Right? So it's not healthy psychologically for humans when we stay really sedentary, which for most of us right now who are working remotely, we're in front of our computers all day long, not even going to go talk to colleagues. We got to move a little bit more. A is my favorite thing in the world. Second favorite to reading while eating apple pie, but is Art of Nothing. So it's just a catchy way of saying staring into space. It's that thing our parents and our grandparents and our great-grandparents used to do when they'd sit out on the porch and just watch the world go by. We were really plugged in, so learning to spend 2 to more, but at least 2 minutes every single day or multiple times a day, disconnecting. Next time you go to the bathroom, don't take your phone with you. Next time you're heating something in the microwave, don't wash the dishes. Just look out the window, right? That art of nothing is really important. And the last one for that bear is rest. The human, we can function on 5 or 6 hours of sleep, but it's just functioning. We thrive on 7.5 to 9 hours of sleep. So get to bed early, and it's easier to do that when you have something pleasurable built into your day.
Good. Wonderful.
So you mentioned about having some relief from work and doing nothing earlier. When you're advising your clients who are corporate success business women, how do you help them to be sort of their authentic self in that corporate environment that is sometimes not welcoming to women and are sometimes a little bit more on the conservative side? So how do you balance being your authentic self as you are, but in the corporate environment having to sort of put on a mask?
One teeny, small, safe step at a time. I just finished writing a 2-day workshop for women in leadership, and that's part of the things to talk about. I had a talk yesterday with a bunch of women about speaking up, and I told them, the second you start speaking up, you have to be prepared for the fact that in some places you're going to be punished for using your own voice, punished for saying the things that people don't want to hear, punished for advocating for yourself. But if you don't show up as yourself, if you don't speak up, then we don't change anything. So I'm not saying it's anybody's personal responsibility to stand up for all the rest of the women out there, but if you want change and you're frustrated, the easiest way to start making that change happen in a system is to start looking at your own behaviors. So it can start small, and one thing I say is make sure that you're being yourself in your private life. Right? A lot of people are not themselves in their private lives. They don't admit things to the people, their friends. They won't say no They won't say, I don't want to do this for fear of disappointing someone. So if you notice you're already not doing that in your private life, do it in your private life, and then you can slowly start bringing it into your business life. Also notice how tiring it is to pretend to be someone else.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember if you and I had talked about this when we were getting to know each other, but when I started out as a psychologist, I was 26, and I shopped at Talbots. No 26-year-old should be shopping at Talbots. None. Shouldn't happen. But I was trying to play Dr. Wall, right? I was supposed to be professional and serious and conservative, and that's not who I am. I totally drop the F-bomb. I hug my patients. Sometimes when I get really excited or when they're really sad, I tear up. But what I found out is when I allowed myself just to be me, it was very scary at first. I'm sure there's some people who won't like it. That's fine. I don't work with them. But I was a much better therapist. And so likewise, professional women who can walk into their space and slowly, one teeny shift at a time, choose to be themselves. It's a lot less tiring to walk into your workplace. That might mean wearing more color because you like to wear color at work. It might mean learning to say, my favorite thing right now, if you need to set limits with people, is to say, I don't have the bandwidth, right? I would love to do that project. Unfortunately, I don't have the bandwidth to do it properly right now. Because nobody questions, I don't have the bandwidth, versus when you say, I don't have the time, people are like, well, maybe you can find time. Maybe you can do it in a month. I don't have the bandwidth says, I'm going to break if you put one more thing on my plate. Right? Learning to speak up is one of the easiest ways in which we can start showing up as ourselves. We can speak up in really simple ways. For example, when your colleagues are trying to decide once everything opens up again, where to go grab lunch, and one person says, I want to go to this deli, and the other person says, I want to go grab Chinese. And you have a preference, speak up. Right? That is starting to show up as yourself. You start doing that in small ways, it becomes easier and easier and easier. The other thing I would say is find allies. Find people in your workspace who are going to be able to step up and let them know what you're struggling with so that when you're trying to show up as yourself, they can back you up. Right? Or when other people keep you from showing up as yourself, when you get interrupted, when people don't talk to you, when people say things that they should not say, period, but especially probably shouldn't say in front of you or about you. If you're not courageous, if you're not in a good place, if you know you're going to be targeted, that person can walk in and step up for you. Right?
Yeah, that's really good. Do you think allies and mentors are like one and the same, or do you think that when you're in a corporate environment, you should have your group of mentors, your upper management who is investing in your career, and your allies who are sort of the coworkers who are able to, help push you to that success?
I think there's an overlap. I think all mentors should be allies, but not all allies are mentors. I think some allies are people who are very different from you, but who want to have an impact. So, for example, one of the things I find a lot as a coach who works with professional women is some of the times the people who are opening the doors for me to do that work with women are actually the men in that space. Right? So they can be amazing allies because they genuinely want to do something and to have an impact, but they have no idea how to do it. So we can educate them. We can tell them, I would like a coach. I need help with this. Sometimes allies are colleagues that we have, or people who we see are having the same issues we're having in the workplace. And so maybe we don't feel quite ready to stand up for ourselves. Maybe they don't feel ready to stand up for themselves. But as women, one of the things we're really good at is standing up for other people. Right? Mm-hmm. That's so much more natural, and it's so much more socially acceptable. Mm-hmm. Right? So a woman who stands up for herself, we won't get ourselves beeped out here. But there are all these words that are associated with a woman who stands up for herself. But a woman who stands up for somebody else, that falls within our good girl idea of the way women are supposed to be. So we can open those doors and help ourselves be more ourselves at work, sometimes by helping other people be themselves.
Very good, very good. How do you advise a woman who is in a corporate environment? She finds out that even taking those small steps to be her authentic self is not working, and it's just not a good culture fit for her. How do you advise her to sort of walk out that door?
Okay, well, I'd start with, if you're privileged enough to be able to do it, walk out that door, right? Sometimes we can't. Some of us, we don't have that luxury of saying, I can leave this space, I can leave without a guaranteed second job, I can give up all the time I've invested. Think of people who have pension plans, who might have all this time, they're just waiting to get vested in those pension plans. But if you're lucky enough not to be caught in one of those spaces, there are two ways of doing it. Honestly, if you're incredibly miserable of going into work, I had a person I was working with who would go into work and wanted to drive her car into oncoming traffic every single day.
Not a good thing.
Not a good thing. So initially, my recommendation for her was take a leave of absence, and then we'll figure out what you need to do. But she didn't have that luxury of being able to take a leave of absence, so we really quickly together worked on what does she need to do to get away from her boss and her direct supervisor who was making her really miserable. But if you can't take that leave of absence, take that leave of absence allows you to slow down, figure out not what's making you unhappy, but what you need to feel fulfilled, what gets you excited. And then once you got that, you can start thinking about what are the things that crush my soul when I think about them every single day. And you can do your research. If you don't have the luxury of doing that and you have to continue working, then start that transition as soon as possible. But for me, when I work with women, the process is always the same. The first thing we identify is what do you need to feel fulfilled professionally? And then we look at the real world. How do we get those needs met, given that your finances, your circumstances, your family, your responsibility, the system is what it is. But if you're really unhappy and you've done what you need to do and it's not working, leave. Staying, there is no gold star. There is no, there's nothing great that comes out of suffering any more than you need to.
That's good advice. Now, Dr. A, I know you have advised hundreds and hundreds of women and hundreds of other clients of different genders. What would you say is the most significant lesson that your client or someone that you've interacted with in your professional capacity has given to you? The most beneficial, most positive, influential impact that they have helped you along your journey and your career, perhaps with self-discovery?
Honestly, I thought initially when you're going to ask that question, you're going to ask it the other way around, but it's the same answer for both. Working with people, working with the people I've worked with has taught me two really important things. One is speak up. And what I mean by speaking up isn't be loud, be whatever. It means just in the way you live and the interactions that you have, try to say what you mean and mean what you say, because when you don't, it destroys your relationships. So as women, we spend a lot of time trying to be nice, and we don't speak up to be nice, to be kind, to be sweet, to be helpful, and we destroy those relationships. And I learned that working with the people I work with and watching them miserable in relationships and destroy them anyhow. The other thing I learned is stop just focusing on what's right and start instead, when you have to make a decision, thinking, is it right for me? Because most human beings, not every human being, but most human beings are decent. Most human beings are considerate enough. So when we think about what's right for us, we're not excluding what's right for someone else. We're not so selfish or so inconsiderate that we want to harm others. But especially as women, a lot of times we think about what's the right thing to do, what's the right thing for somebody else, and we don't take care of ourselves, and we really, really hold ourselves back for it. But if we just stop and think what's right for me, I guarantee we're also still taking care of other people, because what's right for me has some moral principles that have to do with the human being I am.
Very good. And when you're saying what's right for me, it reminded me of something in your Back to Me book. Can you share about your journey in writing that ebook and the underlying principles with Back to Me?
Yeah, sure. So as I said, I decided I was going to be a psychologist when I was really, really young. And then once I set on that path, I think like many professionals, I never thought of anything else. I just did it. High school to college, college to graduate school because I had to for financial reasons, graduate school to postdoc, postdoc to starting my job. And the first few years, I loved it. I loved it. I would, no joke, I would walk into work every single day and I would be singing. And there were times where I was seated with my patients in sessions and inside, I was like this giddy little girl. I was so excited. And then after a few years, realized I wasn't. And I let it go and go because I was trying to be nice and good. And it actually got to a point where I wanted to open the door to my office and just run out and tell people, I wanted to shake the people I was working with and say, do something about it. And what I realized is by the time I was 30-ish, I'd achieved what I'd set out to do. Maybe I didn't set high goals, it doesn't matter. But whatever it was, I'd achieved what I wanted to do. And I felt very lost because I had never considered anything else. And being the good girl that I am, and being the responsible daughter that I am, I'd always done what I was supposed to do. I'd always done the right thing. So when I stopped to think about what the next iteration of my professional life and my career was going to look like, it was very difficult because I was afraid of disappointing so many people. My business partner, my mentors, my parents, my husband maybe. And so for a year and a half, I didn't talk to anybody. I kept it all inside. And then finally I said, I think I want to do coaching. Which when you have a PhD, it's like supposed to be this huge step down. It isn't. It's fantastic. It's just a completely different scale. Mm-hmm. So that's really where the right for me comes. It started off working with people and helping them transform, but then also making my own change and realizing that we continue to evolve as human beings. So I will continue asking myself, what do I want to be when I grow up? Even now, and then 10 years from now, and then 10 years from that. Because I'm always growing up.
Mm-hmm. And I don't think you could ever pigeonhole yourself into one label. Because I mean, you think about you're a coach, you're a psychiatrist, you're a mom, you're a wife, you're a daughter. I mean, your labels aren't just one; they're multiple layers. So that path of what do I want to do, what I want to be, is infinite because you're going to be so many things, and I think that goes with every single person. They wear multiple hats. I know I do.
I was about to say, look at you.
I know, I do. But thank you so much, Dr. A, for joining us today. How can people connect with you?
There are two best ways of connecting with me. One is if you're on LinkedIn, and I think it's at Dr. Alessandra Wall. 1 L, 2 S's for Alessandra. And then the other one would be my website, which is Life in Focus, the letters SND for San Diego.com.
Awesome. And are you on Twitter or any of the other one? Facebook's you don't keep up?
I am, but I'm not really. I have accounts. I used to be on them big time, and I just don't have the bandwidth for them anymore.
Yeah, I understand. Totally understand. Well, thank you, Dr. A. And to my viewers, let me leave you with this quote by Helen Keller. She says, the only thing worse than being blind is having sight with no vision. Thank you so much for watching, and remember that God loves you. Thank you.
Thank you.